Chapter 99, Fighting Beauty with Beauty. Ling Tian chucked in his heart as he thought, this lass is really difficult to deal with, not willing to suffer even the smallest of losses. Can that fake face of yours really fool me? He then replied with a smile, I called little sister as little sister and you also refer to yourself as such. However, you call me young noble Ling. Ha ha ha, it seems that while this little sister addresses yourself as such, you still see me as an outsider. As Ling Tian said that, he let out a deep sigh. However, he purposefully said many little sister, making his whole sentence sound like a tongue twister. Thus, it made his sigh seem very artificial, carrying with it a subtle teasing. Yu Bingyan became displeased as she thought to herself, if I don't call you young noble Ling, should I call you brother Ling? Between man and women, apart from siblings with blood ties and a married couple, which female will address another man as a brother? For me to call myself little sister is merely a means to close the distance between us. It is not wrong at all for me to call myself little sister. However, for you to also call me little sister, it is already a little rude of you. Now, you are actually claiming that I am in the wrong? Yu Bingyan could not help but reply with a chilly tone, young noble Ling, such a joke should not be cracked. Ling Tian replied with a chuckle, since I said something like this, then do little sister think that I have any intentions of discriminating against your looks? Yu Bingyan was stumped as she thought, this brat. So this is where you were planning to trap me. But, Ling Tian's reply made her at a complete loss for words. If she was willing to call Ling Tian brother, he would definitely accept such an address. But, how could she bring herself to call someone brother so easily? The both of them had only met a couple of times. If Yu Bingyan was not willing to call him brother, it made her seem very narrow-minded. But how was it possible for Yu Bingyan to bring herself to calling him brother? If she were to really call him that, this fellow will definitely have another hidden card awaiting her. At that time, with his thick skin, he may even insist that the both of them had already agreed to marriage. Then wouldn't she be in trouble? At that moment, she was filled with awkwardness and did not know what to say. As Wei Zhuan saw how the both of them began to bicker the moment they talked, she observed them with a smile. But seeing how Yu Bingyan was on the losing end, she giggled in her heart before helping her to defuse the situation. Young noble Ling lives up to his name as silk pants indeed, showing no mercy to a young lady at all. Ling Tian then laughed to the sky as he replied, I'm guilty. But this little sister from the Yu family is extremely witty. If I do not choose my words carefully, I would have already made a fool out of myself. I hope that you will not mind. As Yu Bingyan heard that, her face turned around as she grunted in anger. Ling Tian feigned ignorance to the hidden spears in Zhuan's words, obviously only targeting his spear at her. Ling Tian then smiled and continued, this place is the main hall of the family and it is inconvenient to continue our conversation here. I wonder if I can have the honor of inviting the both of you to my study to continue? The eyes of both ladies lit up as they thought, we were waiting for these words of yours. This fellow, pretending not to hear our hints just now. But now that we aren't requesting for it, you decide to take the initiative. Both the ladies looked at each other, sharing the same thoughts. Ling Tian was completely unconventional with the way he speaks, often catching them off guard. At the same time, he is always able to diffuse their original plans with just a few simple words without any difficulty. They could not help but be startled at his terrifying wisdom. While Ling Tian led the way in front, both the ladies enjoyed the scenery along the way, following behind Ling Tian's back. At the same time, the two female guards followed closely behind them like their shadows. Ling Tian could also detect that with his spiritual sense that both the mysterious experts had also followed them here. It seems that ever since Yu Bingyan saw him, that person's aura had been locked onto him. He could not help but praise in his heart, this person is a really good bodyguard. Even if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't be able to think of a better plan. If Yu Bingyan were to have any mishap in the Ling family, it would be the best move to make me the first target. In the small courtyard, Ling Tian had already prepared everything well, standing by the door to welcome them. As the two ladies saw Ling Tian, they were filled with shock with a tinge of admiration. Ling Tian, who was by the door, was dressed in simple white clothes, with her clothes like snow, fluttering in the winds freely. She was like the fairy on the mood, sweeping the palace and awaiting her visitor. On her waist was a green-colored piece of jade drooping down, making her slender waist stand out all the more. Her black silky hair was tied up neatly with a simple jade hairpin. As though something was embedded within the jade hairpin, it reflected the sunlight and shone with a colorful light. Her eyebrows were like willows, her almond-shaped eyes were glistening in the sun, carrying with them a subtle smile. Her expression was like the ocean, as her lips was a shade of beautiful and natural pink. Her neck was like a beautiful swan, proudly holding up her beautiful head. Below her sleek shoulders was a busty but humbly concealed chest, elegant and natural. Below her waist, her rear was perfectly sized, giving her figure an elegant curve to further perfect her beauty. As the winds blew gently, the folds of her skirt fluttered, slightly revealing her perfect and smooth long legs. Ling Tian stood there silently, as though all of the elegance in the world had converged on her. It was a completely dazzling scene. It was just like a beautiful painting, making one feel as though even a single trace of admiration in their heart would be a blasphemy against her and a cardinal sin. Ling Tian and Ling Tian had been together for 10 years already, and their chemistry came from deep within their bones. With a single instruction from Ling Tian to dress up well, Ling Tian had already understood Ling Tian's true purpose. He wanted to use her own beauty to completely destroy the pride of the little princess from the Yu family, which was accumulated over the years by growing up in an aristocratic family. Ling Tian liked a proud woman. But, the condition must be that they cannot be proud in front of him. Now, Ling Tian was just like a fairy who was untainted by the secular realm. She only had a single accessory, the jade hairpin. But, it increased her eye-catching beauty even further. Yu Bingyan and Wei Xuan both felt that if there was even one more accessory on her, it would spoil her untainted beauty instead. As graceful as a celestial. As elegant as a fairy. There is actually such a beautiful lady in this world. Both the ladies could not help but be stunned from deep within their hearts. At this moment, Wei Xuan, who always had great self-confidence, could not help but feel a sense of inferiority. At this moment, Ling Tian's sensitive senses felt that the aura locked onto him had a violent fluctuation. It was obvious that this mysterious expert was also stunned by Ling Tian's breathtaking beauty. This is. After finally snapping out of their daze, the both of them asked. Ling Tian then replied indifferently, "Oh, her? She is my personal maidservant called Ling Tian. She is a lass who does not know anything." Both the ladies felt speechless at that moment, such a beautiful lady being described as a lass who does not know anything. He is really tarnishing this beauty, spoiling such a beautiful scene. Ling Tian then stepped up calmly as she took a half kneel. Ling Tian pays her respect to the young noble and two ladies. Her voice was also sweet-sounding and pleasant to the ears. Both the ladies stretched out their hands simultaneously and helped her up as they said with empathy, "Miss need not be so polite." Ling Tian then laughed, "Ladies, this way please." As he walked past Ling Tian, he gave her a look of praise. As Ling Tian saw that, a trace of delight could be seen in her eyes. Chapter 100, Apprentice. In the study, everything was neatly placed. The bookshelf was neatly arranged with books, and everything on the table was well organized. On the snow-white wall, a few paintings and calligraphy hung on it quietly. The words were all in cursive and the painting was done with paint splashing, with the both of them complementing each other well. Outside the window, there was a small bamboo cluster swaying gently in the winds. In front of the window was a jade flute which was completely white in color and clarinet in deep purple. The two female guards waited outside as Wei Zhuan and Yu Bingyan followed Ling Tian in. The moment they entered the room, they could feel that the room was extraordinary. As they raised their heads, they could see the painting and calligraphy hanging on the wall. The difference between both the ladies showed immediately at this moment. Yu Bingyan walked towards the painting as though she saw a treasure, studying it bit by bit with all her focus. As for Wei Zhuan, she walked towards the words with a gentle smile, admiring the poem word by word. There is no need to listen to the raindrops. Why not hum a tune as you stroll casually through the rain? The bamboo staff and straw shoes are better than a horse, what's there to be afraid of? A raincoat made from straw is enough to spend a lifetime in the rain. The chilly winds made me sober from the alcohol. In the chilly winds, the warm setting sun was welcoming me just over the mountain peak. Looking back at the rainy place I came from, I wandered back there aimlessly. Since I am not fearful of the wind and rain, I am not fearful of the sunlight. In the start, Wei Zhuan was quietly admiring the poem. But after saw the lines of words, she could not help but recite them as a look of excitement filled her face. Good poem. A really good poem. What a beautiful concept. What a carefree heart. Young noble Ling, is this one of your works? Wei Zhuan turned back, with her eyes burning with passion even exceeding Yu Bingyan. Ling Tian then nodded his head calmly as though it was only to be expected. That's right, this is my humble writing, which is nothing more than sentimental nonsense. I really made a fool out of myself. Ling Tian replied humbly. If the late Sushi were to hear him say this, he would definitely get up from his death just to strangle this brat, fighting him to the death. Wei Zhuan's smile was filled with admiration as she said, young noble Ling is too humble. At this moment, Ling Chen walked in quietly with a tray of tea. Ling Tian also made use of this opportunity to change the topic away from this slightly uncomfortable one, drawing their attentions to the tea that was served. While there wasn't a sushi in this world, Ling Tian wasn't too comfortable with making the works of others his own. Both the ladies walked out from the shock Ling Tian created at the same time. As they looked towards each other, they could see the bitterness and excitement in the other party's eyes. No matter who it was, if they were to realize that they could not hold a candle at all to someone else in the area they were most proud of, it was inevitable for them to feel dejected. Yu Bingyan first walked over. Just when Ling Tian wanted to serve them tea, Yu Bingyan's hands shot out swiftly and snatched the teacup, which Ling Tian was about to grab, into her own hands. This action of hers was extremely swift, displaying how she was indeed born in the Yu family and had a set of extraordinary martial arts as well. However, Ling Tian was shocked in his heart as he felt doubtful. While Yu Bingyan's actions were really swift, it was nothing in Ling Tian's eyes. Even Ling Chen was far faster than her in terms of speed. From this point, it can be deduced that Yu Bingyan's level of martial arts was only equivalent to her two female guards. This was the point which Ling Tian was confused about. The little princes of the Yu family, which had 1,000 years of martial heritage, would have definitely been trained since young. According to that logic, Yu Bingyan's martial arts should be a head above the rest at her age. Even if she isn't comparable to Ling Chen, she shouldn't be too far off. But the truth was, Yu Bingyan's martial arts is extremely poor. While her speed was fast and movements agile, it was unable to conceal the fact that she had shallow inner chi. Why is this the case? From the two experts he saw, Ling Tian was sure that the Yu family had the ability to groom Yu Bingyan into someone who was peerless in her generation. Did the Yu family not do that? Or is there another reason? As Ling Tian thought about those questions, he looked towards Yu Bingyan with an investigative gaze. As Yu Bingyan saw the doubt in Ling Tian's eyes, she only thought that Ling Tian was puzzled about why she snatched his teacup. She could not help but smile as she stood up straight, lifting up the teacup with both her hands. Then, she served it to Ling Tian and bowed down respectfully. This was a formal bow for an apprentice to seek a teacher. Ling Tian was startled as he jumped up and responded anxiously, "You! Little sister, what are you doing?" Although Ling Tian already knew that the both of them were here to learn painting, he never expected the little princess of the Yu family to make him her formal teacher. Ling Chen, by the side, also had her eyes widened in shock. Yu Bingyan then said respectfully, "I hope that young noble Ling will accept me as your apprentice to teach me painting." At the same time, she was depressed in her heart as she thought, "If I do not establish master and apprentice ties between us, I would be doing great harm to you if the both of us develop a relationship in the future." After a few encounters, Yu Bingyan knew that she already had an extremely favorable impression towards this suave and knowledgeable youth. If she does not nip it in the bud and continue to interact with him, she will probably fall in completely. If that's the case, Ling Tian and his family will also be dragged down to eternal damnation. After giving it much thought, she suddenly thought of recognizing him as a master. She thought that as long as they had a proper master-disciple status, she would definitely not think too much about the matter. It would also help her to avoid some awkwardness, and she will be able to learn the painting skills which she had dreamt of. This was akin to killing many birds with a single stone. Ling Tian quickly waved his hands in rejection. No, definitely not. Both of us are similar in age and it is sufficient for us to exchange knowledge as peers. I will definitely not withhold anything from you. Why is there a need to recognize me as your master? Little sister, aren't you trying to torture me? Yu Bingyan continued to remain bowed as she said, "If master does not agree, I will not get up." At the same time, she thought, "You fool. I am trying to protect you." Wei Zhuan, who was by the side, also persuaded, "Young noble Ling, my cousin sincerely wants to learn how to paint. Why must young noble Ling reject her? It is best for you to just agree." At the same time, she sighed in her heart, "My foolish sister, you really gave the matter so much thought." Ling Tian shook his head hard, "Definitely not. Miss Yu, it is best for you to get up. I can never accept this matter. If this matter were to spread, won't I become the greatest laughingstock in the world?" In anxiousness, Ling Tian also changed the way he addressed her from little sister to Miss Yu. Yu Bingyan said with disappointment, "Don't tell me that young noble Ling thinks that I am utterly hopeless to teach." Ling Tian was forced helpless by her, rubbing his head with a frustrated expression. Suddenly, he had a flash of brilliance as he smiled. "Says who? I only said that I will not accept you as an apprentice. Since when did I say that I will not teach you painting?" Yu Bingyan's body shook as she looked up and asked, "I wonder what young noble Ling means by this?" Ling Tian made use of that opportunity to help her up as he said with a smile, "You're still calling me young noble Ling? I have called you little sister so many times already. Is there any reason for an elder brother to not teach his little sister? Little sister, if you are not willing to call me brother, you should be willing to call me elder brother, right?" In good mood, he could not help but tease her. Yu Bingyan stood up straight as her heart turned blank. Her original intent was to force him out, but this foolish pig had decided to just charge in straight. Just what should she do? Seeing how she was at loss, Ling Tian joked, "I never imagined that Miss Yu looked down on this silk pants." Yu Bingyan sighed deeply in her heart as she said, "This little sister will just listen to what elder brother says." At the same time, she thought, "Since things are already like that, I can only conceal that matter to the death. I just have to make sure that he doesn't find out." Ling Tian laughed with satisfaction in his heart. He could not help but receive the teacup as he smiled, "Since I can't drink tea from an apprentice, let me drink this from a younger sister." Yu Bingyan's face turned red as she retracted the teacup back. "Nope, I won't allow you to drink any tea now." Just when Ling Tian wanted to snatch it over with a smile, his eyes suddenly narrowed and his gaze was locked onto Yu Bingyan's hands. Sunlight from the rising sun shone through the window and right on the tender hands of Yu Bingyan. It made her hands look like transparent white jade and her fingers like exquisite art. However, this was not what Ling Tian noticed. Ling Tian stared hard at Yu Bingyan's hands with a face of disbelief. At this moment, he suddenly understood why Yu Bingyan's martial arts was so weak despite being the little princess of the Yu family. Under the sunlight, the meridians on her hands were completely shown. Under the sunlight, the meridians which were supposed to be light green were actually a strange purple-black on Yu Bingyan's hands. Chapter 101, Divine Black Negative Meridians. Ling Tian's face grew serious, a seriousness like never before. Purple-black meridians. Being born in the number 1 martial family in his past life, Ling Tian naturally knew what that meant. For this sort of situation to appear, there could only be 2 reasons. The first was that the person had been affected with an extreme yin-based frost poison which had invaded the meridians. The quantity must also be minute, else the person would have long turned to a corpse. Only in the right quantities could a person be able to stay alive. But, their body would still slowly freeze up till they became completely rigid. The second scenario was even more complex and thorny, which was if the meridians were naturally formed in such a way. In the martial way, there was an awe-inspiring name for it, Divine Black Negative Meridians. But to put it bluntly, it was just dead meridians. The meridians would be completely blocked and the practitioner unable to even exert a bit of internal strength. For a female to possess such meridians, her life was destined to end before 20. Looking at Yu Bingyan's meager internal strength, everyone would know that this little lass had to put in many more times the effort as a normal person, to even have such an effect. But, it also showed that her divine black negative meridians still had hope. Just that it was difficult to the point that it could be considered impossible. Ling Tian's expression immediately became ugly to behold. While it could be healed, there were only 2 by Ling Tian's side who satisfied the prerequisites. The first would be Ling Tian himself, to have his divine shocking dragon formula reach grand completion of the 12th layer, to be able to accumulate enough Xiantian true qi to force open the divine black negative meridians. Breaking through the conception and governing meridians, link up the bridge of heaven and earth. Only by doing so could the owner of the divine black meridian continue to persist. That would be akin to doing a marrow cleansing for Yu Bingyan, shedding her mortal body once. She would immediately turn into a peerless expert. However, the process would be fraught with danger. With the slightest inattention, both parties would suffer from cultivation deviation and die without a complete corpse. The second person would be Ling Tian, using her divine ice formula which shared the same characteristics as the meridians, to slowly absorb the divine black negative meridians. Not only would it not harm her, but it would also boost Ling Tian's cultivation. The problem was that only when Ling Tian had reached the 9th layer in her cultivation could she barely meet the requirements to attempt such a matter. With her current cultivation of the 5th layer, if she were to make a rash move, not only would Yu Bingyan not be cured, Ling Tian would be sacrificed as well. As for Ling Tian's Xiantian divine shocking dragon formula, ever since he broke into the 7th layer, he could not progress further any longer. Ling Tian knew that he had already hit a bottleneck. Before this, he had nothing to worry about. However, Ling Tian deeply regretted that he did not make use of the chance to cultivate back then. For him to hit the grand completion of the 12th layer from his current state, he would need at least 10 years. Ling Tian had it worse. The climate of the sky-bearing empire was more towards the hot side. To progress past the 7th layer of the divine ice formula, one would need a place of extreme cold to continue cultivating. If she remained here, it was unlikely for her to reach the pinnacle state of 9th layer in her entire life. With Yu Bingyan's current condition, how could she afford to wait another 10 years? The 3 of them simultaneously saw the ugly expression on Ling Tian's face. Yu Bingyan had a great shock, immediately retracting her hand back into her sleeve as though she had received an electric shock. Thinking of her chronic condition, she could not help but turn deathly pale. Had Ling Tian discovered something? Ling Chen and Wei Zhuan stared at Ling Tian expectantly, feeling strange regarding his behavior. Ling Tian took into a deep, ragged breath, before finally cautiously opening his mouth. Ling Chen, please bring Miss Wei into your room. I recall that you had borrowed a book of inscriptions previously. I believe that Ms. Wei would be interested in it. Wei Zhuan looked at Yu Bingyan hesitantly, to see her lightly nodding her head. Wei Zhuan knew that Ling Tian could have potentially discovered something, and thus followed Ling Chen out. Seeing the duo leave the room, Ling Tian began frowning once more, pacing around the room. He looked at Yu Bingyan, and was about to speak, but ended up shaking his head once more. Elder brother, are you also well versed in medicine? Given how smart Yu Bingyan was, how could not see through Ling Tian's expression of wanting to speak but being unable to? She knew that he should have found out the problem of her body and could not help but feel amazed. When she first started showing symptoms, it took almost all the famed physicians to look through her before they diagnosed her divine black negative meridians. How could it be that Ling Tian, young as he was, could be able to figure it out? Little sister, do you have some sort of chronic disease on your body? After hesitating for quite a while, Ling Tian saw that Yu Bingyan had already figured out his intentions, and thus frankly spoke his mind. Yu Bingyan paled. Indeed, he had seen it. That is correct, elder brother has sharp senses indeed. This little sister has the condition of heavenly in-locked meridians and will not live past 20. My life, I'm afraid, has no hope. Even when speaking about her own terminal illness, her eyes were full of apathy. It was as though she was talking about something unrelated to her. Obviously, Yu Bingyan had already totally given up on her own condition. Heavenly in-locked meridians. Turns out, the divine black negative meridians were named as such in this world, Ling Tian thought to himself. Looking at her calm and indifferent eyes, Ling Tian only felt a sharp pain in his heart, his viscera and intestines seeming to twist together. Seeing how Ling Tian's eyes suddenly revealed sharp pain as well as deep tenderness, Yu Bingyan only felt her young heart tremble harshly. He is feeling sad for me. He is feeling sad for me. In that moment, Yu Bingyan's heartstrings seemed to have been plucked at by Ling Tian. A sort of warm and yet bittersweet feeling of happiness flooded her heart. Looking at him, she suddenly had this great urge to throw herself on his warm embrace, on those strong shoulders of his, and cry without abandon. To cry and vent out all those years of misery and suffering. Yu Bingyan suddenly had a thought, this man, he understands me. Being born in an aristocratic family, she was not lacking of food nor clothes since young, but had actually gotten such an incurable disease. Over these years, in order not to let the family worry over her, Yu Bingyan had always pretended to be happy, jovial, and full of fun, keeping the despair and pain for herself to bear. She took all the negativity in, forced herself to chew them, and to swallow it all. All these years, no one truly understood how much she had suffered. No one knew how much despair she was enduring. No one knew that deep in her heart, she wanted to live on. She wanted to live on extremely badly, just like a normal person. Yu Bingyan shouted that in her heart. As loud and as hard as she possibly could. However, these words would never come out from her mouth. Because, there was no one she could say it to. Tell her parents? That would only cause her family to bow their heads and cry together. Tell her siblings who had always been jealous of her? That would be even more pointless. The world is huge, yet nary a person understands me. There is actually no one who can hear me lament. I can only talk to the wind, speak to the clouds and whisper to the flowers when I'm alone. Maybe all that I can do is to bite my blanket hard in the dead of the night and let my tears flow unhindered. Silently venting without anyone knowing. Thank goodness. The heavens have given me someone whom can understand, accept and take pity on me. That is the man in front of me. Yu Bingyan stared dumbly at Ling Tian. But, she could not bring herself to do it. She could not bring herself to be so selfish. He was so outstanding, so how could she use this dying body of hers and plunge him into everlasting pain? But I really want to lean on him. Even if it's just for a while. I will make that become the eternity in my heart. Oh heavens, could you let me enjoy the beauty of life before mine comes to an end? I don't need a lot, neither do I hope for a lot, and I definitely do not wish to possess all. I just need a fraction of it, to even have a fraction. I would be satisfied. I would have no more regrets. Just like a child being bullied, finding out that her mother's embrace was the warmest. From the depths of her heart, all the way to her eyes, a stream of bitterness leaked out. How wronged she felt. Ling Tian only looked at her gently, warmly, with his eyes full of pity and silent acceptance, as well as a sort of encouragement. At this moment, he silently and steadily raised his arms, facing the pitiful young girl in front of him. Yu Bingyan erupted into heartfelt ecstasy at this gesture. At this point, she threw aside everything. In her eyes, there was only that welcoming embrace. Thank you, oh heavens. Let me be crazy just this once. Yu Bingyan seemed to have achieved a speed she could never reach in her lifetime, as she contentedly, ecstatically, even viciously, threw herself into Ling Tian's embrace. How warm, how secure. How happy she felt at this time. Yu Bingyan's tears cascaded down like a downpour as she let herself loose completely. Chapter 102, Yu Family Head. In the north, the Yu family, moon-climbing star-picking tower. The family head of the Yu family, Yu Manlu, sat by the window and looked at the clouds drifting in the air with a pair of distant eyes. 3 more years. 3 years. 3 years later, just what would the situation be like? Yu Manlu was filled with worry as he took a long sigh. Behind him, a middle-aged man dressed in white stood there silently without saying anything. After hearing those words, his body trembled slightly, revealing a complicated gaze. Yu Manlu turned back and looked at him gently. How is Bingyan? The middle-aged man's eyes turned dull as he said, she should be roaming around the sky-bearing empire now. This lass, Hayes. He ended his sentence with a deep sigh. Yu Manlu looked as though he was thinking about something and laughed. Sky-bearing empire? Good choice. When she went out back then, I recommended her to go to the sky-bearing empire. Today, she is indeed there. Good, good, good. Haha. After saying 3 consecutive good, he let out a wave of laughter. That white-dressed middle-aged man asked with doubt, up until now, I have not understood why elder brother wants Bingyan to go to the sky-bearing empire. Yu Manlu's eyes flashed as he laughed. Haha, you will know eventually. The white-dressed middle-aged man replied, yes. In front of this elder brother who he trusted since young, the middle-aged man would not ask any questions. He knew that his elder brother definitely had a reasoning for everything he does. The only thing he had to do was to obey. The sound of flapping wings then sounded from afar and a white figure dived down from the sky, flying into the tower and perching itself on the shoulders of the middle-aged man. This was a snow-white messenger pigeon, rubbing its face on the clothes of the middle-aged man, making them look extremely close to each other. The middle-aged man laughed and took down a slim bamboo container from the legs of the pigeon. From within it, he retrieved a delicately folded piece of paper and opened it up. As he looked through it, his face changed and looked up. Elder brother, Water of Heavenly Wind sent someone to the sky-bearing empire. They even fought Bingyan. Zhu Ling requested for us to provide additional protection for Bingyan. Elder brother, should I make a trip there? Yu Manlu frowned and began to read the piece of paper as well. But after reading the piece of paper, he relaxed. Don't need to be so nervous, Bingyan is fine. With the stubborn brain of that old fellow in the heavenly wind, he would never send anyone to the heavenly star. This matter is definitely unrelated to the heavenly wind. He then revealed the mysterious smile and said calmly, this matter is related to someone else. The middle-aged man was taken aback for a moment as he asked, How did elder brother determine that? Yu Manlu laughed. In the sky-bearing empire, there is an extraordinary talent who cannot be fathomed. I only found out about his existence 2 years ago. I have once sent someone to investigate him. In the end, the results were very interesting. Ha ha ha. Extraordinary talent? Interesting? Who was he? There was actually an extraordinary talent in the sky-bearing empire that can allow his own elder brother to have high expectations of. This was the first time the middle-aged man heard his elder brother speak with such a tone and could not help but be curious. Who was Yu Manlu? He was the family head of the #1 martial aristocratic family. With his martial arts reaching perfection and a large amount of strength within his grasp, even if they were to mention water of heavenly wind, Yu Manlu would only just pay a little more attention to them. But now, there was actually someone who Yu Manlu thought highly of. The middle-aged man was just too curious. This person, Yu Manlu said with consideration, I have sent men to investigate him for 2 years already. But, every report that comes back would be different and with stark contrast. His actions are always unexpected and completely wild. However, his schemes run deep and he plans extremely far ahead. He is definitely a rare person in the world today. If this was the only case, it would not be worth for me to pay much attention to him. But the problem is, after sending the 19 flying eagles, they are still unable to fully evaluate him after 2 years. The middle-aged man's face changed. There is actually someone like this in the world? Who is this person? Yu Manlu responded with a strange expression as he said slowly, Ling Tian. Ling Tian? That infamous #1 silk pants in the sky-bearing empire? The middle-aged man asked with shock and disbelief. Silk pants? Ha ha ha. If he is the #1 silk pants, then all of the so-called elites of our Yu family are nothing but trash. Do you know how his name as Silk Pants came about? Yu Manlu gave a grunt. Yu Mantang rubbed his head in difficulty. How did his name as Silk Pants come about? How else can it come about? HMPH. Pighead. Do you really think I am so free to observe a silk pants thousands of miles away? Let me tell you, Ling Tian's name as Silk Pants is fabricated by the #1 gang in the sky-bearing empire, the Violent Wind Gang. After the investigations of the 19 Flying Eagles, I found out that the person behind the Violent Wind Gang was Ling Tian. No wonder the rumors of him spread all over so quickly. All of it was just a plan of his and he played along with them. This. Yu Mantang became confused. Then didn't he fabricate himself? Destroy his own reputation? That's right, that's indeed the case. Yu Manlu's eyes flashed with an investigative light. This child is so young and yet able to fool everyone in the world. But, these little tricks of his are unable to fool me. His words were filled with anger. Before he knew about Ling Tian, he indeed did not place Ling Tian in his sights at all. In other words, at that time, he was also nothing but a fool in Ling Tian's eyes. The most frightening part is that after 2 years of investigation, I was only able to find out that the Violent Wind Gang is his, the military workshop of the Zhou family is also under his control and the Ling family courtyard has an extremely powerful private army with about 20,000 troops. As for the rest, we are completely clueless. All of these are only his strength on the surface. With his wit, how is it possible for him to display all of his might for the world to see? In other words, the only ones in this world who know his true trump cards are his trusted aides. Yu Manlu said with excitement. This was excitement from meeting a match. He had finally realized that he was actually not lonely at the peak of this world. Elder brother, it seems that Ling Tian is less than 20 years old still. How can it be possible for someone so young to be as how you described? Did elder brother exaggerate a little? Yu Mantang asked with hesitation. I definitely did not exaggerate. In fact, I underestimated him greatly. Yu Manlu said with confidence, this person is the #1 genius I have met in my life. Thus, I wanted Bing Yan to go to the Sky-bearing Empire this time. As long as Bing Yan reaches the Sky-bearing Empire, he will definitely find out about it and will also approach her for sure. I do not need Bing Yan to do anything. I only want to know how he treats my Yu family. But, I never expected him to test us. Ha ha ha. If not for that, I would not have known that he actually has such an expert under him. Yu Manlu left with satisfaction. For the first time, he felt as though he was having the upper hand in this hidden battle. The two of them had never met before but already considered the other party as an opponent. While they did not know that they were plotting against each other, they both decided to test each other at the same time. Two people who had never met before had achieved such a chemistry unknowingly. The same actions, the same measures, the same concealments, and the same pride. If they both knew about it, they would be shocked for sure. But now, both of them thought that the other party did not know about their own existence. Both of them also felt that they had touched upon the trump card of the other party and was secretly in delight. Chapter 103, Ling Tian's News. After considering for a moment, Yu Manlu issued an order: inform Bing Yan to not be in a rush to return. She can enjoy exploring for a while longer. Hee. As Yu Mantang heard that, he could not help but hesitate. After all, he cared for his daughter as a father. For his daughter to face such a powerful opponent on his own home ground, how was it possible for him to not be worried? Yu Manlu then looked at him calmly. If it was me, do you think I will deal with a young lass who does not pose any threat? Yu Mantang replied without even thinking, of course not. Yu Manlu then laughed, then, he won't either. His words were filled with confidence and respect for an opponent. But 3 years later, Bing Yan. Yu Mantang's words trailed off. Yu Manlu also grew serious. You do not need to mention this again. This is Bing Yan's fate. It cannot be changed. After giving a long sigh, he comforted, second brother, I understand what you mean. As long as there is another female disciple in the family, I will definitely not let Bing Yan face that matter. But in Bing Yan's generation, she is the only female direct descendant. This matter can be said to be the will of the heavens. Bing Yan has sickness on her and my Yu family also feels that we owe her too much, doting on her as much as we can. Thankfully, this child is also extremely sensible, making everyone dote on her even more. As he said that, Yu Manlu smiled affectionately as though the niece whom he doted on was right in front of his eyes. Following which, his face became serious as his tone turned solemn, but when it is time for her to sacrifice for the family, she will have to stand out without hesitation as a disciple of the Yu family. This matter is something that would never change no matter who she is. The interests of the family and thousand-year tradition is always the most important. Water of Heavenly Wind had already chosen their representative. I heard that this lady is already very capable. If this is the case, there isn't a need to guess what the outcome will be 3 years later. Yu Mantang said with a gloomy expression. Yu Manlu let out a long breath as he comforted, Bing Yan is born with heavenly negative locked meridians. Even without that matter 3 years later, she will not be able to last for more than 5 years. Second brother, you cannot hold on to things too tightly. When it is time to let go, no matter how precious it is, you have to let go. If you are unable to do that, you will never be able to be a proper leader. Yu Mantang's eyes were both reddened as he stood there emotionlessly. All of a sudden, he felt as though the spring wind was extremely desolate. Yu Manlu then sighed again and changed the topic, are Xiao Kaiyu and the few of them still hooked onto that matter? Yu Mantang just recovered from his daze and did not have time to consider his answer. It seems as though their actions are getting larger. The moment he said that, he snapped into realization about what he just said and could not help but break out in cold sweat. Yu Manlu coldly snorted as his face turned chilly. With a resolute light in his eyes, he said, if there isn't a way to control them, we can only give up. Yu Man Tang's face changed colors. Elder brother, give it more consideration. Xiao Kaiyu is your biological son. Yu Man Lu's face turned chilly. No matter what his status is, he will have to pay the price if he does certain things. So what if he is my son? The 1,000 years of legacy handed down from our ancestors must not be ruined in my hands. Since he had done it, he must be prepared. Man Tang, you must not inform them about anything. Since they have the ambitions, we cannot close an eye for them. These are things which we will have to do eventually. A moment of soft-heartedness now can be the cause of the destruction of our family in future. You must remember that. With a wave of his sleeves, Yu Man Lu suddenly disappeared. It was as though he was never on this moon-climbing star-picking tower. Yu Man Tang then let out a long sigh. Elder brother has great foresight and is resolute in his actions. He is definitely a top-notch character in the world today. It is just that his heart is a little too hard. His thoughts could not help but drift onto his own daughter. Thinking about his daughter's illness and his daughter's fate, he could not help but feel bitterness. He looked towards the clouds, staring towards the south as he lamented, "Bing Yan, my daughter. Your life is really so bitter." In the dense forest, a wave of bloodlight rushed towards the skies. A few bodies had already lay on the floor in contorted positions. However, they all still had a breath, panting heavily as they longer had any hope of survival in their eyes. Instead, their eyes were filled with a longing to die a swift death. On their bodies, there was no longer be a piece of complete meat. Even a piece the size of a copper coin could not be seen. From the side, it cannot be seen just how many bodies there were. They all lay there bloodied and without a single strand of hair on them. All of them were actually skinned alive. However, their chests were still rising and falling with a weak breath. Beside them, there were a few holes being dug with layers of human skin within them. The way it looked, they were first buried into the earth, tamping them down with layers of earth. Then, an opening was made on their heads, pouring mercury into it. Facing this cruel and gruesome scene, a cold-faced young man dressed in black leaned against a tree leisurely with a few pieces of written confessions written by blood in his hands. His eyes were focused as he compared all of the confessions, as though he was trying to verify something. If one were to look closely, they would be able to see that on those confessions, different names were written in blood. A short while later, that black-dressed young man smirked as he mumbled, "It is completely the same. It seems that these fellows are not lying. I have finally finished young noble's mission." After letting out a heave of relief, he looked towards the contorted corpses on the ground. His eyes were cold, as though he was staring at pigs which were already slaughtered and had no feelings. His dismal voice then sounded, "Very good. You guys did not lie to me indeed. Now, I will keep to my word and send all of you on your way. Let me give you guys an advice, remember to be a loyal person in your next life. If you become a traitor again like this life of yours, your outcome will probably be the same." Killing intent then exploded from his eyes, and with a shang, a long sword was drawn. The black-dressed man then walked forward slowly like a reaper of death, walking towards those barely breathing bodies. For those of them who still had eyes, not a hint of hatred or fear could be seen. Instead, they were filled with a look of liberation. Death can actually be an extravagant dream for someone living in torture. A cold voice then sounded, "After arriving in hell, remember the name of the person who killed you. I am called Ling Tian." His long sword brandished. A short while later, Ling Tian's figure darted out from the forest and rode onto the back of a green-bristled horse. With a wave of his sword, the rope which was tied to the tree was severed. Following the loud neigh of the horse and the sound of hooves rang out, kicking up a cloud of dust. After half a month of hard work, I finally obtained the name list which young noble wants. Ling Tian thought to himself, however, I am already a few days late from the stipulated time. He could not help but grow nervous in his heart. It seems that I am going to be punished by young noble when I return again. As he thought about that, A bitter smile hung from the corner of his lips. However, a look of zeal filled his eyes. Ling Tian was extremely clear that every time his young noble taught him a lesson, it was extremely useful for increasing his strength. His heart was full of expectations. I am a sword for the young noble. His only sword. Ling Tian thought to himself with pride. Apart from I, Ling Tian, who else can be the sword for my young noble? For the ambitions of my young noble, I, Ling Tian, can kill everyone in the world. Who cares if I go to hell? It is just a cycle of reincarnation. He traveled for a long time tirelessly. In the front, there was a clear river flowing calmly outside the sky-bearing empire. By the side of the river, the willow trees stood tall and proud. The grass swayed gently and the winds and birds sang beautifully. On the opposite, a majestic building stood up, proud and tall. Ling family courtyard. Ling Tian straightened back on the horse, relaxed slightly. On his chilly face and sharp eyes, a trace of warmth was also revealed. Here is my young noble, brothers, hopes and dreams. For their safety, for the ambitions of my young noble, I, Ling Tian, am willing to be a bloodthirsty murderer.